suppose it needs to be very clear about what will happen if you go in a restaurant, whenever the bars open, and I don't think that'll be for quite a while, but I don't know. What about leisure centres and things? How, I think people will need to know, okay, it's open, what do I do? It seems easier in lots of shops, because I think shops can quite easily do what they're doing now in supermarkets. They can just do what they do, and people have to wait to go in, and the spaces, markings around things like that. That's not so hard in a shop, even if it's a closed shop, or a big one. But I think it's restaurants and bars, and even schools. They've got to really talk that through, especially for young children who they won't necessarily care about who they touch, or that sort of, whereas older children, you can guide them a bit more, or they'll conform a bit more, will sometimes. I don't know, I think people will not have the detail. I don't think he'll have it all on Thursday or Sunday. I think come out with an overview, a strategic overview of, well, this is a map. He did say that, so it's not going to have the detail, I don't think. But it will give people an idea of, so okay, so when am I likely to be able to do this? When am I likely to be able to do that? But they'll have to say, oh, if the cases go up, this is what we're going to do, because people will need that reassurance as well.
Indeed. I think one of the issues is how much from government is just going to be guidance, and how much is going to be, you have to do this. And governments can't legislate for every workplace, can they? So a lot of it is going to be down to individual employers to set the right environment for people to return to work. But we all know not every workplace is going to always follow what it should. There are employees who aren't so reputable. So I think a lot of people are going to be more at risk once they return to work.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Rebecca said, really resonated for me. What are the things I'm going to feel comfortable about doing? And already I know, I'm not going on any buses. I'm not going to do it.
But the implication of that for public transport, I mean, public transport's already, in London is on its knees. It's desperate for people to come back. But, same thing. I tend to cycle all summer anyway. So this is sort of getting into my time where I cycle. But I'm really going to be cycling. I'm not in a hurry to go and sit in metal.
But at the same time, having said I'm not going on buses, I would in a heartbeat. I don't know, this sounds really irresponsible. Go to the hairdressers tomorrow.
Yeah.
If my hairdresser reopened tomorrow, I would go. On the basis that I would be, obviously they'd have protective gear and stuff like that, and I'd wear my mask and stuff.
But they're doing that in Spain, aren't they? I think it was Spain. They've got, the hairdresser's got a shield. The customer has a mask, I think. And obviously gloves. I mean, what more can you do unless you got the virus? Then you'll cough over someone, but it should be fine. But
this is what
I don't know.
All of these measures are about managing probability, really, aren't they? It's not if you stand 2 meters away from someone, the virus cannot get. It's not that.
It's not.
If you're closer, you're more likely to. If there's clouds of a phlegm or whatever else is in the air, you're more likely to accidentally ingest it, and you're more likely it's all about probability. So I don't think it's unreasonable to sort of say there are you're going to balance that probability of various ways, and depending on your own sort of priorities. I don't think that's unreasonable, but there is a point at which it's all of us, as Eddie was suggesting, that all of us are going to be making these individual decisions, as employees, as employers, and citizens. And it's just, do we even know? Do you have any idea, right, whether what we're doing is enough to make sure that there isn't a rapid increase in infection rate? And that, I've got to say, I'm not, maybe without evidence on my part, but I don't have a great sense of that there's any reason to think that's the case. We're going to manage this well once it becomes this sort of like semi-lockdown state.
Yeah.
I don't get, I don't know how anyone else feels,
Yeah.
I mean, with Rebecca, and she's seeing that you're having the easing of lockdown at the same time cases are going up. That's got to be troubling.
Well, and I just don't even understand it. You have to get inventory to open a restaurant.
Yeah.
And then how many people are going to come? I mean, there's just so many variables there. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
And I think part of this is the challenge, the uncertainty that everybody's having to deal with, because if we kind of take it from if you like, a neuroscience perspective, uncertainty is one of the worst things that we can deal with, that we can live with. And no wonder people then are saying there's a degree of fear and anxiety about easing of lockdown, because we're going into the unknown. So again, I would say, well, what are the things that potentially governments could be saying to us all, irrespective of whether we're comfortable with, as this Martin says, it'll be individual dispositions, but generally, broadly speaking, what are the things that governments across the world, as we're easing out of lockdown, need to be saying to people to give them that little degree of reassurance or confidence that it's okay, or we're on top of this, or what are your thoughts?
I think that they should help supply masks. They should help. They should be taking temperatures if you're going into the building. But not all employers are going to do that. They're going to leave it up to their employees. And there's a lot of questions. I mean, there was the mayor, and he had, a bunch of reporters there asking him questions, and they were, what if you're an employee and you have to go back to work, but you don't feel safe? Will I still get, unemployment benefits?
Right.
And they were like, we don't know. That's a good question. We don't know. So, I mean, they're trying to work it out. And like Eddie was saying, I mean, you have good employees and you have employees that I don't know. Maybe they just don't want to go to work. I don't,
And this is an ideal opportunity there. Oh, great. Yeah, can use this.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, it's hard.
Sorry, Rebecca.
Oh, no, you go right ahead. I'm done.
Sorry. I was going to say that I think that we've reached a sort of a point where the government thinks, well, we just can't keep paying out all this money anymore. I mean, they've sort of, committed till the end of June, and although they don't want the cases to go up, they also don't want the economy to totally collapse. And it's that dilemma, and it's like, how much do we do? But I from what I was reading today, I don't think that it's going to be extended beyond the end of June completely. I think Rishi Sunak said you won't go on a cliff edge, but I think there's definitely that feeling to draw back. Now, if they are doing that, they're going to have to reduce the lockdown. I mean, it's you can't do one without the other. Something's got to give, and so they've got to reduce the lockdown. They've got to let more people go back to work, so they've got to let businesses open, small businesses, large businesses. They've got to work out how people work in those environments, because they're just not going to continue to pay. They haven't got the money, so they say, well,
it's the economic risk as well as the system to sort of either borrow or print, however you're going to do it. You can't keep doing that ad infinitum. At some point, it's going to have a deleterious effect. So, totally understand the government's dilemma and all of that, and I get it, and all well and good. It just goes back to that point, though, I think, of, if you're saying we need people to go back, well, you need all schools to go back, because then schools are obviously the main sort of, child. So you can't sort of say, oh, we'll have those years go back. If it means that if your child isn't in the right year going back to school, you can't go back to work. And if you need that, then you just have to let all schools go back. And again, I hear different things. So this, you know, I don't know the facts on this, but with a lot of other infections, children are often the
carriers.
Carriers.
Yeah,
Right? I don't know if that's true for COVID. I think
yeah.
I've heard reasons to think that they are not, but whatever. You're going to suddenly have lots of kids, as Francis said, you know, not as good at keeping
washing hands
and social distancing and all that kind of stuff. And they're going to be coming back into people's homes, and they're going to be going, you know, and the reality is if that's the case, you're going to, I mean, there's just no way around. I can't see how you don't get to the point where, yeah, there's just going to be an uptick again. I can't see how it doesn't happen.
Well, maybe in
opened up
that captive audience, maybe in those environments, then we can do things like testing. You know, maybe that's where we should test. You know, pupils are tested at certain intervals. I don't know. Have they had it? Have they got the antibodies? Have they got it now? To keep an eye on the children. I suppose they could have their temperature checked when they go in the school. If they can do it in other buildings, I don't see why not. I don't know.
So,
sorry, Rebecca.
Is a whole nother thing, you know. We're told that we have the capacity for 122,000 tests. When you drill down, I'm not sure if that's a completely accurate assessment.
I agree.
With a spin going on.
So they opened up, because they started opening things up here, they opened up daycares. So because they had to open up daycares, right? Because if people are on the front line and they don't have school, so that they did that. So that's just happened this week. So we'll see.
We'll again, and I think that's the watchword, isn't it? We'll see, because as things start to unlock or things start to ease, I think that's the message. We've got to wait and see what happens. And I guess everyone is fearful and worried about it coming back and the spike. Sorry, Martin, go on.
I was just wondering, is anyone here in what would be recognized as a high-risk group?
No, my son is, though. He's in a high-risk group because he's got psoriatic arthritis and he's on strong medication. Okay. But he's one of these that doesn't worry about it at all. But yeah, and my parents, obviously, and our parents, you know, they're in high-risk group. But even they went to walk down the high street yesterday. I think they just thought, we're going out. I mean, they didn't mix with anybody, but they said, well, we went down the high street, so don't blame you. You know, there's no shops open apart from Boots anyway, and I think Savers, but I think they just thought, you know what, we've got to have a walk. And you know what, they could go off their feet. I mean, you can't, how long can you keep older people in if they're well enough in theory to go out, really? It's difficult.
And I think this is part of the issue now as to the measures that are being talked about. So staging, staggering, whatever it is, you know, that different groups will be coming out at different points. And then the use of face masks, which we've been talking about. And I guess particularly thinking about face masks, I kind of understand that it's more about not breathing on other people or sneezing on other people. But I guess from a, and this might sound inappropriate, but it's, I guess from a kind of cultural perspective, I kind of associate the wearing of masks with, you know, China and Thailand and the Far East. And I just wonder, what does it mean for Britain? You know, this notion of people going around with masks.
I was arguing that I think that's something that I think will stick a little more. You're going to see people like, you know, and as you know, like, yeah, in the Far East, it was more of a, you know, I'm ill, and I'm walking around, so I'm going to
cover my face.
Socially minded sort of action. And I think, you know, you might get some of that, but I think it is, you know, people traveling now on tubes or, you know, international travel, whatever else. I think you're going to see more Westerners
doing it.
Face masks. I think that's just something that's going to stick around for a while. So
indeed.
There'll be small little
small things that will happen. So face masks are going to be a thing and we've bought lots of face masks now. I've got mine ready. I've just got to get it because we've got one of those permanent ones, so I'm going to wash it and make sure it's all right. So, and then the big thing for me then, and we've been having a discussion about it, are these contact tracing apps, you know, that people are talking about. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something you're going to participate in and sign up to?
don't really understand yet.
Everyone's silent.
No.
Really understand them yet. I don't really understand what they mean. They're trialing them out in the Isle of Wight, aren't they? I'm not quite sure what they do and how invasive they are. I'd have to understand them a bit more. I haven't really read into it.
I mean, I'm not too worried about the privacy things. Maybe I should be, but the UK government, Rebecca, they developed their own app. They haven't taken the Apple Google one, and they're doing it in a different way. But the only thing I'm worried about is it's meant to drain your phone quicker. the UK one. So I don't want to go out and find my phone dies. But that's got to be a key part of letting go of lockdown, hasn't it? Is track and trace and isolate if they find people who have acquired it or who are part of a group where it's prevalent. So so I think it's got to happen. And if we don't take part in it, we're limiting its effectiveness.
Right.
But it's only one weapon,
measure.
isn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Rebecca, is anything like that happening in the US?
There's talks about it, but I don't know that it's come to fruition yet. It's just still being looked at.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing thus far is, Francis, it's uncertain how it's going to work because it's still being tested. Eddie, you don't mind as long as it doesn't drain your battery.
Important.
Very important. So when you're out and about, still being tested and talked about in the US. And I guess from a personal perspective, I would be saying, and I don't know whether I should be saying this quietly, but I'm not convinced yet, and I'm not certain I would be signing up to the app. I have to say, I have issues about people kind of spying on me and watching me and getting in touch with my contacts, or because the way I understand it works is it right that if you're passing somebody and they may be, or you'll come in contact with someone who might have the virus or have a temperature or something, it spots them and then sends them a message and sends you a message that you were close to somebody, and then you can go and get tested and so on.
So you're worried, aren't you, Lorna, whether they'll know you've been to the hairdresser?
Yeah. That's right. I can sneak into the hairdressers. Or not,
I would say that, I'll probably sign up for it. But at the back of my mind, those concerns about, in general, I kind of get more and more concerned about online privacy and all that kind of stuff. I use VPNs and DuckDuckGo, and I'm that wing of sort of I'm not a techie, but I tend to try and go with sort of the minimally invasive online options. So this does give me pause in that sense. So I'm like, where's this data go? What does it mean?
Exactly.
What are the unintended consequences of so many of these things?
Indeed, absolutely.
This is a thing that's been designed on the back of a fag packet. Let's not, it's just been like, right, we're going to do this thing, and we go, and then, and someone made the point, it's kind of, this is the government, many of its operatives were involved in a campaign around Brexit that utilized the services of one could argue, a morally dubious organization called Cambridge Analytica that, pumped out misinformation and used data in kind of a malignant way. And those same people are now in government, and we're going to go give them our data. I'm like, great, I might still do it, but I don't feel wonderful about it.
Well, I think that's one of the biggest areas for me that I would need some reassurance, as you said, about questions about how the data is going to be used, what's going to happen. I mean, is it going to be a forever and a day thing, or is it going to be a temporary until a vaccine is discovered? And what happens to the data and the information they've gathered over the period of time? Do they destroy it or what? And how secure is it? You know what I mean? How secure will our information be? And so those things make me kind of hesitant. And I guess, and I'm not a techie, but Do you know what the rationale is why they've gone for, the British government anyway, has gone for its own as opposed to using Apple and Google? And would you have felt more comfortable if they'd gone for an Apple and Google route, guys? Anyone?
Not necessarily.
No.
Because
it's already on your phone, isn't it? They
Yeah.
can trace you, or on your phone. I don't know if you, yeah. I mean, what do you think, Martin and Rebecca?
Well, if you have your location on, then everyone that all the apps can trace you, and then honestly here that gets sold to the government anyways. Honestly, it does. So I mean, I don't know, I turned my location off.
Yeah.
The people that love me and I love know where I'm at. I don't need to have that on.
You don't need to have that on. Yeah.
I'm definitely with Rebecca on that one. I mean, I just broke my phone. I dropped it face down like last week, right? And I had so many things disabled on it. Like I can't get, so the screen doesn't work. So I can't put my passcode in. But you know, I didn't do things like thumb. I don't do Siri. I don't do all these things. So I can't get into it. So that's it. So the price I paid for being sort of paranoid about my security. You know, because I've just lost this phone and that's it. I gotta give it one. This downside, this paranoia. But yeah, no, I'm completely with Rebecca. I'm like, hey, look, you know, I have no location services on anything. You know, if I lose it, it's gone. Whatever. I don't. You know, I go that way more than the other.
Absolutely.
So, you know, going back to the original question, then Lorna, is I probably feel, and this is mad me saying that with Boris Johnson handling my data, but I probably feel more comfortable with the government designing its own app rather than a for-profit company, Apple and Google. I'm not saying that they're evil or whatever. I don't. I'm a big Apple fan, whatever. But you know, ultimately they're motivated by profit, and you know, yes, they may do this thing and then whatever else, but you know,
more safeguards presumably with government.
Their revenue, and I might not be happy with what the other thing. So I'd rather it's done purely for civic reasons, and it's kind of like there's some there, you know.
So there are some safeguards, some protection.
That's assuming you trust the government 100%. However,
indeed. So as we start to kind of round off the conversation, I guess the sort of questions for me then becomes: are there any other measures? I think Eddie called them weapons, but I'm going to call them measures. Any other measures you think government should be thinking about that is not being thought about at this moment in time that you would want to see being put in place to give us the confidence as lockdown is eased?
Well, once we get a little bit more information about antibodies, and if once you've had it you can't get it again, and we don't know that. I mean, most people are connected to a GP, which is a more manageable population. So perhaps we can be tested locally in our communities to see whether we've had it. I don't know how else they're going to do it anyway, apart from roll it out GP to GP. So I just think maybe they could. Yeah, I think it's testing, isn't it? I mean, other countries have done so much better than us because they tested from the start. But I mean, I know we haven't got the facilities that we should have had, but I just think, how are we going to manage? Because we've got to get on with our lives, but we've got to protect ourselves. So I think wear a face mask. I don't wear one, I have to admit, but if I had to, I would wear one. Yes, okay. I would conform with all the environmental things and going into buildings, no problem. But I think going forward, we need to think about, well, how are we going to manage the communities? How are we going to? So I think we need more testing in captive audiences, so all of GPs, you know, can sort of see in as far as they can do waves of people, test them to see how many people have got antibodies. I don't know. I don't know what other people think.
So more testing and particularly in captive places, that big
schools, you know, you've got a captive audience there.
And I think, Rebecca, you already mentioned that government should be providing the masks and things like that. Is there anything else you would want to see governments doing, or being, you know, measures that need to be introduced in order to make us feel confident, more confident about lockdown being eased?
I don't know if it's not necessarily about more confident about lockdown or whatever, but like we should ask ourselves what's actually gone well out of this. Things have changed that seem to have worked for the better, for you know, for the greater good than it did before. So one small example is going to our local general practitioner, the local doctor. Lots of people are now doing that by video rather than direct visits to the doctor's surgery. Well, why can't we do that in the future? And particularly helpful for people who can't easily get out and so on, or single parents, and so on. So, you know, those sorts of things we need to say, well, what has gone well? What do we want to continue after this?
Good point. And I think that was what we were trying to pick up on last week as well, weren't we? So what are the positives that have emerged from this enforced process of lockdown?
I think people will probably do their shopping less frequently than they used to, you know, just nip here, and they'll probably say, well, you know what, I'm going to do a weekly shop, or a near, you know, bi-weekly if they can. I think I'm going less. I think you sort of think, well, I'll get more and stock up rather than just keep going, which is something I used to do. I must admit, I'll just go down. I don't know. I mean, I think probably maybe people might keep that up. I don't know.
So that's one thing that we've been doing here that is a good takeaway, and I think a lot of people will do it. We have shoppers in some of the stores that are closed, and they do the shopping, and then they bring it out and put it in your car, so you don't go in to the store. And there's a lot of that going on here. And the doctor over the internet, that's something too, but they're having a hard time in rural areas with small clinics. They've closed the clinics, and so they don't have the technology to do. We need more technology for sure.
So some opportunities there. Martin, you were going to say something, I think.
I think I forgot it, but I think of something else to say now. In terms of what we can do to reassure, this is actually the point I was going to make, is that I was wondering if that question slightly implies that there are reasons to be reassured, not to be paranoid about it, but you know, the reason we are sort of delocking, if you want to put it, it's not. It is economic, isn't it? I mean,
absolutely. I think if it wasn't economic, I don't think it would be.
You know, we'd be like, oh, well, save things to do to keep it all locked down. But we're just going, all right, you know, the country can't take more of an economic hit. So, in a way, it's kind of, I don't know if you can be reassured if your concern is sort of like the spread of this virus and the fact that we don't know a lot about it, and you know, what are my potential risks from exposure? If you know, am I just going to be it means nothing to me, which is the vast majority of people. Let's still, you know, 85%
are just not,
manageable paracetamol, right? But are you the 15, or dare I say the 2 or the 1% that this is a real serious thing for? You know, and I think I'm not sure there really is
anything you could say
reassurance to be had on that, because, like, you know, whatever you think of him, you know, this thing nearly took down our prime minister.
I know. Absolutely.
So,
you
know,
absolutely. I mean, I posed the question because, as I said, it's something that seems to be in the air, that people are anxious, and according to research, you know, I think I mentioned in the blurb that I sent around, so only 1 in 5 Britons are confident or open to the idea of the lockdown being eased, and the majority are saying no to schools being open, no to pubs and restaurants being open, you know, no to sporting arenas and stadia being open. So there's still that strong sense of concern around, and I guess it was just a question, I thought, Is there anything that could be said or done that would say, okay, all right, we might give this a, we'll take the risk, because it's kind of risk averse, I guess. And can you do anything to support people who may be risk averse at this point?
The one that you could possibly say is it's not as sexy as you know, hey, you know, masks or testing, whatever else. It's just that, you know, the risk of a global depression is potentially worse than this virus, right? If you want it, like the you know, I hate to quote Trump on this, but yeah, in that sense, yeah, the medicine is better than the cure. You know, it will kill tens of millions around the world. If you know, the recession, our last recession killed. The statistics of it, you know, from 2008, it killed like 40 million people around the world. Big.
You have to have balance.
So there has to be a balance. In that sense, you've got to say, well, okay, we open up because there's a greater danger there, right? It's a necessary short-term action to sort of halt what could have been, you know, could have been a runaway disaster for our healthcare systems. But we've done as much as we can in that regard. So now we're going to take measures now to protect the economy, which gives us all of the resources that we need to combat this thing anyway. So that's what we're balancing, you know. So I think
so they did what needed to be done in the immediate response, but now there needs to be a kind of managed economy or something, a managed economic response.
The other thing I'd say as well is that I think it's, you know, just culturally as well, things like, and I'm going to say this being, you know, a filmmaker and all that kind of stuff, but I think it is important to have things like, you know, sports back and the arts going on, you know, those things are, I think they're really, really, really important, you know, just socially and culturally. And if we are going to have something like a kind of an indefinite semi-lockdown where we're, I don't know, we're staggering work or partial industries are returned or whatever it is, you know, part of that should include new cultural product, because I think those things feed the soul and they're important, and you know, and they act as this, you know, as we're all isolated, they can still act like social glue, you know. Absolutely,
and I think it's how we manage that. What do we do then to make all these different environments and contexts safe? And I think it's like when everyone was locked down, it was, oh my God. But eventually people did become accustomed. They got a little bit more used to it. They went out on their bikes and for their walks. And yes, of course, I think there'll be some trepidation, but I think that people will test it out slowly. Some will be the bolder and they will just do lots of stuff. And then people will be watching, they'll be watching the figures, and then they'll just do one little extra thing. So it'll be a gradual thing that people will then get used to it. But I mean, obviously it's not going to get back to complete normal until we found a vaccine anyway. But I think, you know, I think it'll just be a case of people will get used to pushing the boundary a little further. And then once they feel safe doing that much, they might push another one, and I might go, I think I'll go to the bar. I mean, I think that'll be a little further down the line, but you know, I think that it'll be like that really. I think as long as there's measures in place that people feel, well, that's reasonable, that seems safer to do it that way, and I don't mind, you know, having to accommodate to that degree, then I think it'll be an incremental thing, but I think we'll push our way back to some sort of normality. But I don't think it'll be the same even when we've got a vaccine. I think we'll take some of this away with us. I think it would be good if we did.
Absolutely. What a great way to kind of wrap up, I think. Any final comments? I mean, I wanted to ask, because I thought, what are the kind of business opportunities that have arisen from this? And I don't want to take away from Francis's wonderful summing up, but you know, one of the things that I kind of started to think about is, and I think I sent you a text, Martin, can we have an open air cinema or a drive-in cinema?
Right on the day I broke my phone. So I can see it and I can't do
anything
to get into the phone to sort of respond. So I'm hopefully getting my new phone tomorrow.
So I just thought, oh gosh, what are the business opportunities we could be exploring?
Yeah, you know, don't get me started on the cinema thing again. I mean, I'm not too optimistic on that industry.
Okay. Any thoughts as to opportunities?
Whilst there are those business opportunities, maybe like drive-in cinemas, the other thing I'd like to see is that we try and maintain, local shops and local businesses, because that's been an emphasis as part of the lockdown is, if you're going to drink loads more alcohol at home, then order it from your local brewery.
Rather than
every Friday at 11:30, I leave the house to walk 2 miles to a local bread shop that's still baking its own bread, and it's fantastic. But I want to do that because they're local, and I want to keep them going. Apart from the big supermarkets and everybody else, they'll survive. But some shops local shops have shut down for good. And that's terrible to see that small shops just haven't got that backup of capital and savings to keep them going.
Brilliant.
I've seen that around here as well, that local shops, some of them 2 weeks and they're like, we're gone, that's it. So, in terms of the amount of time, I was really surprised at how quickly some of them went. These are shops that we have a lot of sort of artisanally kind of a local shops here, and quite a few went. Really surprised by that.
And I hope we don't forget our kind of local food banks as well. I think it's shone a light on communities at the more granular level, and to support your local food bank, there will be people that need it, people that never thought they'd need it have used it. So I think we need to think about that as well, about helping our community like we've tried to do now.
Yeah, brilliant. So some really great. So shop local, and don't forget our local food banks. Any final words from you, Rebecca, as we wrap up?
Nope. I just love this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I know, as I said, we're so appreciative because you're coming in at 7 a.m. So thank you for that. As I said, we've probably kind of ended now our conversations about COVID specifically, and we're going to start to shift the agenda. And so from next week, as I said, we've got Steve Trivett. It's going to be slightly different format. So it'll probably be a presentation from him, 10 to 15 minutes, and then a discussion with him. And he's going to be talking on the topic of living and leading in the new reality of greater complexity, volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity. What does that look like? What will it take? What are the sort of mindsets and the behaviors that we need to kind of start to adopt in order to succeed in that kind of environment? So that's what we're going to be talking about next week. So have a think if there are questions. I'll send you out Steve's report so you can see it ahead of him coming next week, and have a think about any questions you might want to put to him. But again, huge thank you to everyone. Really great conversations as usual.
Thank you, Lorna.
And thank you so much, and have a fabulous week, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers, everyone.
You too.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.
See you soon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.